For more on this, we speak to Carl Larry, president of the Oil Outlooks and Options, joining me live from Houston. Good to see you. It's always good to see you and the big smile. The three-party talks, though, they're not smiling about that because it hasn't happened. They've suggested a date, and Russia's pretty much hasn't really said anything. What do we make of this?
Well, Russia in this case actually has the upper hand. Even though the EU and the US have these sanctions going on and want to enforce them, there's no doubt that the EU needs the gas coming from Russia, whether it's for winter to keep them warm, but more importantly also for power generation. It's an important part of that EU economy. And I think to keep those prices low is going to be a big deal to them now and down the road.
So for our viewers, here's the background, right? We had the issue with Ukraine, Crimea, eastern Ukraine. Russia has threatened to cut off gas supplies to Europe. Winter is coming for Europe. Has the gas been disrupted yet, or is it the worry that gas could be disrupted?
Well, it's definitely the worry that gas could be disrupted. Again, it makes a difference because of the winter coming up, but right now, the U.S. refining system is going through a maintenance period, and the European refiners were thinking this would be a good time to make up a lot of lost imports that they had this summer. But if these gas prices increase, power prices will increase, and they'll lose that margin. So again, it comes down to a lot of pressure on Europe, whether it's the European Union and the countries within it. But it really is getting to that tipping point where it might be a big problem.
All right. Help us understand a very simple question here. So what's being discussed is that they're going to use the Opal pipeline. That's been proposed, at least. By using that pipeline, that bypasses Ukraine. I'm referring to the oil between Russia and Europe. Explain to us why this is good for Europe, or why this is good for Russia, or who is this good for?
Well, it's definitely good for Europe because they get to leapfrog over Ukraine and Ukraine's issues with paying Russia for the gas that goes through their country. It gets them a more direct line to that Russia energy powerhouse, whether it's gas or oil. It comes through directly to Europe. So it'll help lower prices for them. But again, Russia's in the driver's seat right now, and coincidentally enough, it makes a difference now that China is starting to see a little bit more stimulus in their economy that does take a little bit of pressure off of Russia having to worry about the money coming in from Europe.
Remember there was this talk about how the U.S. might export some gas, and they were going to get gas from other places to Europe as well, so they weren't so reliant upon Russia. What happened to all that discussion over the past couple of months?
Well, it's a combination of things. Number one, the first thing is that developing any kind of natural gas, liquid natural gas tankage from the U.S. to any other country, it's a process. We're still building some of the ports here in the U.S., and nothing's really moved forward too quickly. But that's because we've seen so much oil production here in America. Crude oil production is at a near record high, and probably will be at a record high by the end of the year, and definitely into next year. So as we focus more on oil, we're not focusing more on exporting that natural gas.
So winter is coming for most of the world, minus Australia and I guess the Northern Hemisphere. And that leads me to my question of, we need the gas to heat the homes, right? Because that's the electricity, or they're running power plants. Should the rest of the world be worried that there's not going to be enough gas, or is this just a Europe problem?
It's definitely a Europe problem, and I think this is really just a sensitive issue and sensitive point for all the countries in the European Union, because just now, just as they're starting their quantitative easing program over there, and they've been stimulating the economy, higher gas prices, higher electricity prices are going to put a crimp in that recovery. So Europe's definitely the most sensitive here, and probably the one that's going to worry the most.
And the impact of potentially natural gas prices?
Natural gas prices definitely will rise there, and we'll probably see, it trickle down into oil prices. I guess that's where we'll see the rest of the world start to be more concerned, because the alternative to using natural gas for fuel, for heating, for what there might be, will probably be diesel fuel, and that's where we'll see those oil prices, feel that pressure.
I know you've been looking at these discussions, or at least proposal of discussions. Do you see any big sticking points in there that might get a deal either done or not done?
Well, I think, you know, the European Union's been really shaky over the past few years, ever since Greece had their issues. So there's going to be a lot of internal discussion, a lot of internal debate in the European Union on what's right and what's wrong. So Russia does have, you know, the upper hand here as we're getting into the colder months. But I think it's going to be all about Europe right now. The U.S. can say what they need to say, but Europe really needs to make a decision on what they need to do and how they need to do it going forward. So I think it could get done, but we're going to see it come from the European Union if anything happens here.
Well, the rest of Europe has to wait, and so do us. Carl Larry, good to see you live for us from Houston. Thank you.